Evet. Dang, I went live, y'all. I went live without even checking to see how my webcam looked. All right, guys. Hey, hello, welcome. I know I'm a little late. I was actually finishing one of the books I was talking about yesterday, Our Wives Under the Sea. I finished it, and it wasn't that bad. It was pretty good. I I'll talk about it more next week, but a bit predictable in my opinion. However, I like books that and I like tropes that are told in unique ways. You know what I mean? So many things have been done, repurposed, reflipped, and rescripted that it's almost sometimes really difficult to come out with like a new, unique, original story. And then even there, people will start duplicating said original and unique stories. So I'm more so about how the story is being told. It's really hard to come out with something super original, and even if you have an original concept, it doesn't mean that you are telling the story well. Um, a good example is probably Has Been Hotel or Ruby. Has Been Hotel has a way more original concept than Ruby. Um, you know, there being a war between heaven and hell, and this hotel opened up for people who want to be rehabilitated, and so their souls can be sent up to heaven, but heaven's a complete shit show. Like that's a somewhat original concept. However, the way the story is told is could use some work, you know. And so to bring that back to Wives Under the Sea, I feel like Our Wives Under the Sea was predictable in my opinion. However, the themes that they encapsulated and the way the story was told, beautifully done. Same with The Fall of House of Usher. Like I was talking about that show last night and I was fangirling over it. Um, Very well done. However, Succession had came out 4 or 5 years ago and had taken the masses by storm. And we have been seeing inklings of movies talking about money hungry corporate CEOs and almost relishing in their demise and what that would look like in the form of a TV show. So I say all of that to say that while I personally think that the book I finished was had like a predictable ending, I had fun going on the journey to get there. And it fits my genre fascination of like weird girl horror. This is more like sapphic weird girl horror, so I like that. So yeah, hi guys, welcome um to my stream. We're like an hour and or so late, maybe like a whole hour late maybe. But thank you for joining me. I am very excited to have you guys here. And this is the big project I was working on for the past couple of weeks. So yay, finally got it done. And you know, I wouldn't say it's like some big monumental project, like it was difficult to get done. It was more or less, what did I want to say? Because I feel like I have so much to let off of my chest. Couple things I want to start with. Um, I feel like the past 10 years before 2020 happened, so from like 2010 to like maybe 2019, I feel like there was a avid push in showcasing different forms of representation of different groups of people, different races of people, different types of people from different backgrounds. And for that reason, I will always appreciate what the 2010s had to offer in that regard. Um, and we still have inklings of that in 2020. It just sometimes, in the 2020s, excuse me, it just sometimes feels like there is a lot more hatred and vitriol out there than there is positivity in the name of quote unquote free speech or whatever, right? But I want to tell you guys, as a Y2K kid, someone who grew up in the early 2000s, who grew up in the suburbs, who grew up very isolated, which is something we're going to cover today. I have to say it was very, very hard to see people who looked or represented an authentic version of me. And I think whenever I would express this disdain that I had for not seeing this representation, I was severely, for lack of a better term, gaslit. Gaslit by my friends, being that most of them were all white, by my family, by the kids, black kids that did look like me but had more swagger, which we'll talk about. We'll talk about because I think there is a lot to unpack there as well. I just felt like my whole existence was a big gaslight, and I knew deep down inside, which I don't know if a lot of black kids who do grow up in the suburbs know, or come to realize, but I knew something was off and something was uncomfortable, and I couldn't put my finger on it, and I knew my experiences weren't the same. I also know that I was a huge outcast in my elementary, middle, and high school years, growing up in the suburbs, growing up in predominantly white areas, going to predominantly white schools. Now, I will say that if I were to go into, I don't know, the public school system at the time, I don't think I would have survived. And I think my parents did a good job in making sure I went to Catholic school and stayed in private school and was well educated. And what's funny is that I talk about these things now, and I used to be so ashamed of like the accomplishments that like my parents have done in order to give me the opportunities that I have now. I used to be so uncomfortable, I used to be so embarrassed, I used to be so ashamed. And in the same breath of being uncomfortable, embarrassed, and ashamed, I was also very how do you say, ignorant about a lot of things, very sheltered about how the world worked and how difficult the world can be. Oh, Twitch is having an issue. And I think because of that, I really lost a lot of confidence in myself. And I lost a lot of confidence in knowing that, like, me existing the way I do in and of itself is, in fact, a privilege that I should be grateful for. And up until recently, especially with the push on social media for, I'm gonna say respectable Negroidism. In one way, that's one way to put it, where there is like I noticed like a group of black people who want to separate themselves from black culture, not realizing that even though you are trying to separate yourself from quote unquote black culture, you are still black culture because you are black, right? And I've seen more people like kind of wear with pride that they grew up in the suburbs, that they were well educated, that they came from money, blah blah blah. Disclaimer: my family didn't really come from money, okay? But I'm still here for this. Building confidence back up is a journey. Hi, Cole. Awesome to see you on YouTube today. But what I will say is that my parents fought to make sure that I had the best quality of life that I needed, and I really couldn't want for much, right? And I think that's another reason why I'm so like, I don't want any kids because I know that I will probably not be able to give my kids like the quality of life, an inkling of the quality of life I had when I was like growing up in the 2000s. You know what I mean? And even then, there were still some issues. So yeah, this has been under my pocket, or in my pocket for a while. Stuff that I wanted to talk about. The reason why I'm talking about it now, and just like what, why I kind of move the way I am, why I kind of think the way I am, why I'm kind of like, to an extent, obnoxiously pro-black, and how my pro-blackness kind of pivoted into being like pro-black woman first, primarily, pro-black woman and queer people first, primarily, and then pro-black everybody else, right? It's probably because of this, and it's probably because I knew deep down inside when I was a young kid that something was off. Something was off deep within me, and I had to venture out and find it, right? And I think a lot of that had to do with representation. I'm very, very big on representation, and I think a lot of the reasons why I have been hesitant to get into some of the subcultures that I'm currently a part of now. So I'm thinking being into anime, being into comics, gaming from time to time, cosplaying, the alt scene is because there really wasn't a lot of representation of that in the early 2000s. Of people who looked like me, who weren't like being picked on and bullied and dragged through the mud on social media, or not even social media, but just in real life, or being put into a box of you're black, you need to do hip hop, R&B, or be adjacent to that, right? There wasn't a lot of representation of that out there. The image of blackness that I saw in on television, media, and entertainment was all, unfortunately, like if I really have to say it, I'm gonna make my screen big again. It was all in the perspective of men, whether it was white men, whether it was black men. It was all based off of the perspective of men and how men perceived me as a black woman, right? I believe Girlfriends, the show about 4 girls living in LA and they're black women, right? Girlfriends, not girl, my girlfriend. Okay, yeah, I believe like a man wrote this. Okay, hold on. Let me get my facts straight, because I think a woman created this show, but when it came to the writing, you can tell that that men were in the Kenya Barris. We had Mara Brock Akil, which I guess is that's a woman. Yeah, cool. Mark Alton Brown. Okay, why? Like Mark Alton Brown is a man. Okay, cool. I hope that's the right Mark Alton Brown. Okay. And then who else wrote the? Okay, we got Regina Y. Hicks, Kim Collier, Karen Gist. All right, I'm gonna 1, 2, 3. I don't know if that's a man or a woman. I'm counting. I'm counting how many writers were women. 5, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, so there were 9 women writers. Okay, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 male writers. And a few of which were not even black, right? So then you had Girlfriends, okay? It was a show about 4 socialite adult women who were navigating the dating scene of LA, kind of like Sex and the City, but like for us, right? 9 women wrote the series, 12 men wrote the series, and I'm gonna take a shot out of the dark. 4 out of the 12 men were probably not even black, right? And then you had Tyler Perry, Mr. Tyler Perry, who was very dominant in the writers' room and was responsible for writing all of the emotional pain, trauma of black women in his shows. And that was really like all the representation I had. Never really got into the Brandy show, never really got into the Monique show. But if I can be honest, like seeing that visual representation just in like live action media, it all felt like tropes. It all felt like tropes and a lack of humanization of like women that look like me. You know what I mean? And I'm not even going to talk about cartoons and how they used to do like awful, you know, stereotypes and tropes of black woman with the neck rolling and the snapping and the, you know what I mean? And it's like, we're all not like that. And as soon as like we put up a boundary, people automatically want to box us in there. Like if I say, hey, can you not call me out my name? Oh, she's so sassy. She's, you tell her, girl. And it's like, no, like that's not what this is. I'm just saying, can you just like chill in like crossing my boundaries, you know? So that's kind of what it was like with the 2000s live action media. I'm not even gonna get into anime. The excuses some people would make for anime, when it came to replicating or calling out like certain cultures, you know, because anime is predominantly in Japan. not even gonna entertain video games either, because there really wasn't a lot of representation in the 2010s for video games, and it was very focused on the gaze of men, you know. I will say that when South of Midnight came out, that was a treat. I haven't played the game, but just to know that a game like South of Midnight was able to come out and be produced, and it have its own original story, own original lore, and be like very like realistic, based in New Orleans, you know what I mean, and like picking up on that lore of like New Orleans culture. And even then, you have idiots like Asmongold still saying that it's too woke because it's not something that he can fack off to. You know what I mean? It's just weird. But it was a lot worse back then. And I think that's something people forget on social media when they talk about the good old days, and they talk about wanting to go back to a time where social media wasn't as awful as it is now, wanting to go back to the coziness of the early 2000s. I think a lot of people forget, or even just like the unpolitical correctness of the 2000s. A lot of people forget that the 2000s were very, 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 very awful. Like, they were very awful. They created a lot of like mental health issues in a lot of people, right? I mean, the docu-series based off of The Biggest Losers really went into that, about like how awful the 2000s were and how they co-signed a lot of the behaviors that were going on. And you know, we just kind of ate it up. We were just like, whatever. And there was a lot more control, right? Like, I'm thinking about 9/11 and how almost all of us were really on board with going to war in Iraq, right? Even though I mean, you know, Al Qaeda really wasn't like aligned with Iraq like that, but we were going to war. We were doing a war on terror, right? It was a lot easier back then to get everyone on board with the war than it is now in 2025. It was easier to get people to go to war in 2005 than it was in 2025. You know what I mean? So things have changed significantly. And I really want to just kind of talk to you guys about my experience growing up as a Y2K kid, as a Black Y2K kid in Suburbia. I really want to talk about it. And I also want to talk about why the Suburbia I knew owes me absolutely everything. And I will absolutely not, like, I will do everything in my willpower to not allow myself to go back to that state of being anymore, or live that life anymore. Like, for example, I grew up in Connecticut. I never want to go back. Like, if I have to go up to the Northeast, I have to have a really juicy, well-paying job, and I need to be living in New York City. Like, that's the only way you're going to see me in the Northeast. Otherwise, you know, maybe we'll hightail it to California. Maybe we'll move, like, I don't know, probably not Texas. Like, I like Georgia way too much to move anywhere else in the Bible Belt. But, like, you will never see me up in the Northeast existing and living there as a local. Like it really has to get bad down here for that to happen. And, you know, it might, but, like, just know that if I'm up there, just know I'm miserable. Like, I am not vibing with anything that's going on up there, because it's just so ugh. But anyway, we'll get into it. And before we get into it, I just want to follow up with the slide I was talking about with Amanda Seales versus 20 Black conservatives, because I noticed a lot of the conservatives that were speaking to Amanda Seales were, in fact, they grew up in the suburbs. And I think it's very interesting to see different people's perspectives of how they grew up in the suburbs and how it shaped them, because I believe it really can go one of two ways, right? It can go the way of you you're looking for more people that look like you and creating a community for people that are like you, or you try to assimilate so hard and so badly that you end up disowning that side of yourself in order to be exactly like, not to get too wokey woke, but your oppressors. So anyway, moving on. All right, and so let's talk about the title. All right, while I take a water break. Okay, so why the title? Why the title? Why the title? All right, so I'm going to tell you why the title, okay? This has been a TikTok sound that has been trending on TikTok. Maybe I can pull up the sound and like some TikToks to show you what it looks like. But this is a snippet from one of SZA's like. Sorry, let me just center this a little more. From one of SZA's like scrapped songs. This lyric has been trending. The price of being black in suburbia. Daddy, with the Jansport backpack, right? I had a Jansport backpack. I think I did. Yeah, I had a Jansport backpack. But yeah. And so this is a trend that a lot of black girls have been using to talk about their experience growing up in suburbia and in an environment where they did not look like the girls that they had grown up around, right? And so they are showing clips and pictures of what that would look like for them. You know, if you were in like 2010s YouTube, you remember Tila Dunn and how she was like trademark, like whitewashed black suburban kid, like definitely out in LA, and the way they would gaslight her in some of her videos, but just like regular girls just talking about their experience of how different they felt from everybody else and how it's really not the same as like some of the white girlfriends that they have grown up with. And I resonated with this a lot because I grew up in the same experience. So let me see if I can pull up some TikToks. Except, like I said, or like I was trying to say, ooh, there's a fly. I gotta wash the dishes in my kitchen. Like I was trying to say, I wasn't a cool black kid, right? In suburbia, right? I was very antisocial. I was a weirdo, and I hold complete accountability for how weird of a person I was. Let me see if I can find the video. Yeah, I wasn't cool. I was a nerd. So you factor that in with being, you know, not looking like the kids that I grew up around, and then me being a complete nerd and outcast. And like, girl, it's pretty tough. It's pretty tough. I will say I will hold accountability in that because I wasn't really like socially like aware. That's probably why I didn't have a lot of friends. But I also just like between the times of I want to say middle school to high school, I just got really, 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 really anxious. Like I just didn't like at middle school I would keep breaking down and crying why I didn't have a lot of friends, and like my one best friend that I grew up with in elementary school, she wasn't in the school that I was going to. I guess her parents couldn't afford it. And so I would just break down and cry as to like why I didn't have any friends. And I remember very fondly, like I'm bringing all of my parents or my mom and all the women in my family onto a phone call about how I felt so lonely and isolated because I didn't have any friends. And I just remember them being so over me and being so tired of my bullshit and being like get over it, right? And you know, my mom will tell the story and she'll be like, "Aha, it was so funny. Like you were freaking out because you didn't have any friends in middle school. Like it was like a funny hee hee ha ha moment. You'll grow out of it, right?" And I remember the story like I needed you guys to be there for me, and you were not there because you could not resonate with an 8-year-old girl that you decided to have. You know, like so. Let's see if I can find a video of like people who look some like adults a little bit. Okay, this is the one I did find. Okay, so I'm not gonna play the sound because I might get flagged, but this is just like a trend a lot of young black girls have been doing about like what it's like being black in suburbia, and then they give a little excerpt about you know what their life is like. Shout out to Naya for Lucky. Because it is a very authentic, it's a very unique and authentic experience that I think we can talk about. that is rooted in privilege. Don't get me wrong, because a lot of Black people and brown people don't get this privilege, but it's also has its own discrepancies as well. You know what I mean? And so then you have the lyric of SZA's song, "The Price of Being Black in Suburbia," Jansport backpack. Yeah. So yeah, I that's why I wanted to title this "The Price of Being Black in Suburbia." Also, I love SZA. SZA is mother. I love her down. Love her so much. And I also think, you know, without a lot of push of representation that was going on in the 2010s, we would not have an artist like SZA who really doesn't have to fit into that pocket of being like, you know, female hip hop or super urban R&B or like a caricature of herself. And when I say urban R&B, I mean like, wow, that sounds anti-black, doesn't it? Let me go back. Let me backtrack. Sorry guys. Like a Sexy Red caricature almost, or a Sukiyana caricature. Like she didn't have to portray herself that way, or like a struggle love caricature. Even though a lot of the content she talks about is like toxic, right? Like Summer Walker every so often seems to be going through it in all of her songs, and it's like, girl, like get over it. Like stop. Okay. And so you have a bunch of black girls who are saying, you know, the price of being black in suburbia, it's difficult, it's tough, it's hard. I don't have a Jansport backpack, but not more importantly, I'm facing prejudices every day. And this is something I almost always dealt with growing up in the suburbs, right? White suburbs, okay? There's a difference. There is such a thing as a white suburbs and like a more black, brown, diverse, friendly suburbs. There is a difference, okay? And it does exist, right? And then we started seeing a bunch of white girls who I guess aren't blonde talk about the price of being brunette in suburbia. Look at this one here, right? The period price period of period being period brunette period in period suburbia period. Like she thought specifically black women. Oh no, OBS Studio disconnected. Okay, reconnection. Okay. OBS Studios disconnected for a second, guys. I'm so sorry. Okay, let's get back into it. All right, sorry. Our outrage is valuable to whomever. And so I think the more we keep feeding into the outrageousness of people just being loud and wrong on the internet, the more they get attention, the more people are talking about them, and the more our nervous system is unregulated while they get to, you know, move on with their lives and get the 5 minutes of fame that they need, right? Be aware of that, black women and queer folk. That's what they're doing. And so, yeah, a lot of white girls, I guess, resonate with the song and wanted to change the word of black from brunette, right? As if being brunette is so hard growing up in the suburbs, to which some people posted a picture of Clairol blonde hair dye and said, girl, fix it. Like, you know, and you know, some people putting like the brunettes in here putting, you know, I'm not black, but sometimes I feel like I get it. Being the only brunette girl in a world full of blondes hurts. Guys, going for the blondes has always been and always being second choice. Oh, brother, this guy stinks. And I don't have the rest of it, but it's just like, you know, depending on how old you are, you still might be focused on the attention of men. The battle of saltiness, the milk wars. Yes, exactly, Cole. But like my whole thing, a couple of things are very interesting about like, you know, brunettes feeling like they have to insert themselves in a song where they are not, they need not do, right? Okay. Couple things. I didn't know how intense it was between brunettes and blondes when it came to who was more preferred. Like I had no idea it was that serious, because growing up there were a lot of like, it was very hard for you to see like girls with blonde hair, blue eyes. I did not know that was like such a big thing. But then I think about like what happened in 2016, Trump becoming president, and then like fascism like coming to the rise. And I wouldn't be surprised in the past 10 years that there is like a more of a adamant push to have, you know, a preference towards blonde haired and blue eyed women, to the point where now we're seeing it infiltrate our advertisements, where they're saying that good genes equals blonde haired, blue eyes, and Sydney Sweeney, right? So it's just very interesting to see how serious it can get. And I hear in like certain states like Utah with the Mormonism, they're very much so like, yes, absolutely, blonde hair, blue eyes, come here. I also look at like some celebrities now, because a lot of people have been leaning into like the blonde hair trend. You know, you got pop girls like Sabrina Carpenter and Taylor Swift, and then Renee Rapp, right? And then Billie Eilish dyed her hair like a ghostly blonde, which I'm actually really fucking with. And then you have some, you know, black girls taking on the like blonde hair look, right? Like the honey blonde look. A lot of black girls wear the honey blonde look, similar to the way Beyonce does, which, you know, in my opinion, has like, sometimes I feel like they lump in with each other a little bit. No tea, no shade. Like, for a minute, it was Tinashe, Victoria Monet, and I think Chloe Bailey all had like dirty blonde hair. And I was just like, can we separate ourselves a little bit? Tyla having the blonde highlights, but I get that that's a trend. You know what I mean? Like having blonde hair, unfortunately, not to shit on my blonde hair, blue eyed girls, but like that's the trend. But when I was growing up, it was definitely brunette, dark hair, dark eyes. I think because of teen media like Twilight and Vampire Diaries and wanting to look ghostly, pale, and dark, and then even pop culture like pop culture classics like The Jersey Shore. That was our Love Island growing up, The Jersey Shore, and I could not get into it growing up. And then the Kardashians, right? And so having dark hair or having that like dark hair and then like blonde highlights at the bottom was like super trending. Having blonde hair, blue eyes was like not like, I didn't think it was like that big of a deal. You know what I mean? And I didn't even know how big of an issue it was to be born genetically with blonde hair and blue eyes. I had no idea it was that serious, y'all. No idea. And then as you get older, like you start to lose your blonde hair color. Did not know. And the way some white folks will talk about it, which is very interesting, is that like they'll be like, yeah, I used to be like a honey blonde when I was younger, but then I grew up and I turned into like this mousy, dirty blonde. It's almost like the way some insecure black people will talk about how they used to be light skinned when they were a kid and then they got in the sun too long and now they're like more brown, dark skin, right? Like it's just weird. But regardless, the price of being black in suburbia trend was never ever supposed to be for the brunettes. It was never supposed to be for the brunettes. It was never supposed to replace the black part with the brunette part and try to compare struggles, right? Compare and contrast struggles. That was never the intention. I could see if like a Latina or like a brown skinned Indian girl would be like the price of being brown in suburbia, even though it's like still like, you know, like we shouldn't be swapping things out. I could understand because like being Indian in suburbia must suck, or being like, you know, Latina in suburbia, Mexican in suburbia, especially now, must be awful. Asian in suburbia, you know what I mean? But it's like, no, we're being brunette in suburbia, and it's like, ma'am, ma'am, no. Right? Sonic says, bitch, you're white, go get some blonde hair dye, Buki. And it's true, because like you are white, you can get some blonde hair dye if your parents allow you to, I guess. And you can dye your hair blonde, and then boom, all the guys will pick you. All the guys will pick you. You'll no longer be second choice. Like, come the fuck on, right? But yeah, that's why I wanted to step in and make a video, because I saw on TikTok people were either trolling or unironically sincere about being brunette in suburbia and the troubles they have of not being picked over their blonde-haired, blue-eyed white friends. And I was like, no, I'm going to cut that out right now because I'm going to talk about my experience, right? I'm going to talk about my experience, and then maybe some, you know, black girl out there, black queer person out there is watching this and might be like, damn, I had the same experience, or damn, this shit is normal, right? Which I think is the beauty of the internet, is that we can connect and intertwine so well that our experiences don't have to be isolated, that we can constantly connect and interact with different people on different sides of the world and share similar commonalities, right? Something I did not have in the 2000s. Up and not as prevalent as it is now, I guess. All right. Anyway, moving on. All right. So let's very quickly talk about like why I act the way I do, right? Because there are reasons. There are reasons. Okay. Why I'm very like pro blackity blickety black to an extent. But like more pro black women. Why I was so anxious early on in my life, and why I am growing out of my anxiousness as I grow up to be the black woman that I am today, and what that means for me in the future. Okay, so Exes, why do you act the way I do? Why do you act the way you do? Well, I'll tell you why. Okay, so 3 images here, okay, to kind of show you what it kind of looked like growing up in white suburbia. I will say this again. Growing up in black suburbia, black and brown suburbia versus growing up in white suburbia are 2 very different experiences, and I need y'all to understand that, right? They're not the same, and yes, a black and brown suburbia does exist, or a more diverse suburbia does exist. However, when you do have a mother, right? So pretend this is my mother, okay? And then pretend this is me. Pretend this is me, right? And you have a mother who's always telling you that all black people are ghetto and that you shouldn't be like them. You kind of go through life as a kid with a shield that most black people are your enemies. That those are the ones that are the oppressors, not the white people, right? And that's the mom I had. So here's some trauma dumping I may or may not be doing, but my mom was very, very anti-black. Okay, just like point blank period. She's very anti-black. Very like respectable black person. I am not like these ghetto black people, and you shouldn't be like these ghetto black people either. I'm pretty sure when she first stepped foot in Atlanta, she did not like it because she was not used to seeing like all black people exist from all different walks of life who had money and means. This deck is brazy. What do you mean, Cole? Oh my god. Who come from money and means, who are existing in ways that she would consider like ghetto and like ratchet. The way you chose a white child as an example. Girl, I was on crunch time. Girl, I was on crunch time. I'm so sorry. Hold on, let me see really quickly if I can try a like black mom yelling at kid stock image. Whose white baby is this? Okay, hold on. Okay, wait. I'll do this for Cole. Whose white baby is this? That is funny, Cole. Order, send backwards, send to the back, delete this. Okay, here we go. I'm doing this for Cole, and I'm doing this in the name of representation. Okay. Okay. Cole, I fixed it. Okay. Cole, I fixed it. Better. Oh my god, yes. Even when being critical of my childhood and the negativity of it, make sure we have the correct representation. Thanks for checking me, Cole. I'm not gonna lie though, this picture here, this is gonna be very difficult to find. This was very difficult to find, like a bunch of kids picking out a black kid. Not on my black August. Oh my god. Sorry, Cole. I'm so sorry. But yeah, so like this is what it was like growing up, right? All black people are ghetto, don't be like them. This is my mom, and then this is me. Honestly, this looks like a biracial baby. So but like it's fine. um, pretend this is me as a kid. Yeah, okay. So that's what it was like growing up with my family, with my parents. My dad wasn't really like the main disciplinarian, right? My mom was, and she was like the one who was like whatever I say goes when it comes to how I decide to raise my daughter. And so a lot of what she instilled in me that I remember very fondly is how we were somehow better than other black people, or that we didn't want to be like other black people. Mind you, before I came to it, like when I came to Atlanta, the quote unquote other black people in mind were not awful, right? Like they were very, very sweet. But because of this, and like, let's talk about this real quickly for Cole, because I don't wanna on Black August, I don't want to. So black kid being made fun of by other black kids. No, that other photo is accurate. I look like that too in middle school. Claire's hated to see me coming for that cheap ass goth girl jewelry since I wasn't allowed in Spencer's. Spencer's, to be fair, Spencer's is inappropriate for children. Which other photo is accurate? The new one with the black kid or the one with the white kid? Stock image. Okay, I found one. Yeah, the scene kid, the scene permed hair kid, yes. He's actually still on social media, and he has a kid now. And he seems to be doing well. He's like, yeah, hey guys, that's me. And we're like, really? Sent to the back. Specifically with the heat damage in their future, that was me. Okay. Alright, so let me change some things up. Okay, hold on. I'm gonna change some things up really quickly. In the name of Black August. I didn't even know we were in Black August. I haven't been in the loop with how many holidays, events that we have. So thanks for reminding me, Cole, about Black August. Okay, here we go. Nyeh, 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 nyeh. Okay. Okay. We're almost there. All right, I switched it up just for Cole, but also because it's Black August. So now we have a little black girl, okay? But yeah, so I have a mom who's very like she's anti-black, right? And then I also have a like me going to school, right? This is me actually to the T. This is me, hair pulled back, replace the bow with like gumballs. And these are a group of young black kids in school who are like, who basically called me an Oreo more or less because I didn't have any rhythm, I didn't have any swag, mostly because I wasn't allowed to listen to the radio. There was secular music on the radio, and I listened to, songs and watch shows that were of age appropriateness, right? Like I was listening to Hilary Duff and Radio Disney Jams Volume 5, and for a second, when I was allowed to listen to the radio like that, now that's what I call music. And I wasn't really listening to like super hard, heavy hip hop. Something I noticed about like the younger millennials, like the millennials versus like Gen Z, is that Gen Z was perfectly okay and comfortable with like the teeny bopper Disney Channel pop, girly pop factory, and all the media that came from that. But like Zillennials, for whatever reason, it's either Zillennials or it's either the kids that I grew up with, did not want to be caught dead watching those types of shows. Did not want to be caught dead knowing that they still watch Hannah Montana, that they were into High School Musical at some point, even though it was for our target age demographic, 12 years old, right? Like ages 8 to 12 years old, did not want to like let everybody know they listen to Hilary Duff or Radio Disney and all that. Like they really wanted to be way, way older than they actually were, which is common amongst most kids, but to like an eerie extent. And it might be a couple reasons why. Maybe because of like, you know, kids are cool. Maybe they were just like picking on other kids. I don't know. Or maybe because, you know, they just wanted to appear older, really. But yeah, this was younger me at high school, and this was like the other young black kids when they realized that I wasn't watching Scary Movie or Scream, and I wasn't watching, or I wasn't listening to the new, I don't know, 50 Cent album, which, like, no offense, don't you know shade. If you're 8 years old, you probably shouldn't be listening to the new 50 Cent album either, right? Yeah, I was called an Oreo. I was called an Oreo, and if you guys don't know the lore behind being called an Oreo as a black kid, it is because of the filling of the Oreo. It has white filling, but it's black at the top. It's just basically like a black kid who acts white, right? And I remember telling my parents this and saying that I was very offended by this. This really hurt my feelings. And I remember my parents being like, "Oh, don't worry about it. You'll be fine." Which, like, thanks, parents. Thanks. You know, you guys really did your big one on that one. But, like, yeah. So already, factor one, you know, having a mom or parents who are like, all black people are ghetto. Don't be like them, right? And then you have the black kids who are like, well, you act white anyway, so we don't want to hang out with you, right? Turns someone like me into someone like this. As soon as I realized that I was adamantly told by my family that I should not want to be accepted by the black kids. And then it was proven by other black kids that, like, I was not really socially accepted by them, right? I turned into this, okay? It was a moment of weakness. And this is what I looked like hanging around white people from 2000s to 2010, okay? Fried, silk press and all. I did wear my hair pinned straight from like the age of 13 to like 17, 18 when I didn't have access to the hairdresser I went to, which was, I don't recommend. They called me Shablacky too. Shit starts today. What does Shablacky mean? Hold on, Cole. I gotta look up what Shablacky means. Oh my god. Is this Shablacky? Cause he looks kind of cool. No, that's Shababi. Okay, never mind. Hell should I know? Okay, yeah. But like, this is what I was looking like from early 2000s to 2010s. I was like, you know what? My mom's over here telling me black people ain't shit. The black kids over here are telling me I ain't shit. I'ma just hang out with my white Nubian kings and queens. With my fried dyed laid to the side, not even a silk press, right? Out here giving like full-blown emo scene kid. That one black kid that every white kid swears they have black friends, right? Like perfect stock image. Side note, I really like this guy's nose. I think his nose is so beautiful. Girl, it's prom made up. Okay. This nose is so cute. I like his nose a lot, and I like the little nose ring. Yeah, but this is why, this is like lore. This is lore, origin story lore as to why I am the way I am right now, right? And so let's put a pin in this real quickly, because with all of this that I've seen, that I've grown up around, right? Factoring in that I grew up in white suburbia also, right? This is breeding grounds to end up like this, right? Or like this. Like, I say this all the time. This really could have been me. And what's funny is that Candace Owens actually did grow up in like Stamford, Connecticut. And I also did grow up in Connecticut. I grew up in like the Hartford area. I very much so could have ended up like her. All right. Bad silk press and all. Well, I don't know. I'd say her hair didn't look that good here, but like here and here, it's giving a little bit. But like, just know it could have been me, right? Um, like this is breeding ground for all of that. But like deep in my core, deep in my gut, I knew, girl, like this could have been us exactly. this, this really could have been the path we could have taken, right? I knew that that's not what I wanted to be, and that's not where I would always stay, right? And so I say from like the 2000s, and I'd say like right after, like black kids were like, "You're an Oreo, hee hee ha ha," right? Even like the Hispanic kids too. I was like, all right, I'm going to the white folks. I'm going to the white folks, and I'm just gonna stay over here. It's safe over here, right? My one and only best friend from Connecticut was like a white girl, which I think we had our own issues, but that's neither here nor there, right? And then I just kept hanging around white kids until the 2010s, until high school, right? And that's when things started to change. One of my current friends now, that I'm, I hang out with and I reach out to from time to time. I actually hung out with him at Dragon Con for a minute last year, introduced me to a group of black friends who were just as weird and eccentric as I was. And like, if you're watching this, you know who you are. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that, right? Where they were kind of into anime and manga and kind of into like weird things. They weren't like necessarily athletic. Not that being athletic matters, right? But like, let's just be real here. If you're like, it feels like, especially in predominantly white areas, if you're like black and like athletic, you're automatically like cool, swagger. Like they put a how do I put this without sounding like awful? They characterize you in a way that, oh yeah, that's like Tyrone, and he's like the quarterback, and like he's strong and shit, right? And it's like you don't really know this, like who Tyrone really is, but you like the idea or an image of Tyrone, like he has all this swag because he's good at football, you know what I mean? And that's where he's like pushed into, and if he fits out of that binary, like if he wants to do, I don't know, band, like he's not cool anymore, something like that. Or if he watches anime, because there was a time, mind you, when anime and manga was not cool, when it wasn't mainstream, when normies weren't involved in the genre, okay, for lack of a better term, where like if you were into anime, that was social suicide. That was definitely social suicide, right? And so very much so I could have ended up like this, and I could have stayed here, and this could have been me debating Amanda Seales, all right, or this could have been me, Bad Silk Pressenol, right? But like in the 2010s in high school, I did have a core group of black friends that I did hang out with that really showed me what it was like to just accept myself and love myself for who I was, and that there were other people like me that existed. However, when I told my mom about these friends, she was still on this time, all black people are ghetto, don't be like them. Still on this time, still like we're better than them, love, like, right? Which, if you are a parent and you are, if you have your kid in the suburbs, if you're a black parent with your kid in the suburbs, don't do that. Don't do that. Please don't do that. Just like have them exposed to different types of people. I'm not saying have them like hanging out with the YNs and shit and playing ops every Saturday, but like just have your kid well cultured, okay? Like keep them close to the immediate family. Keep them close around other kindred spirits that are just like them, right? And then don't have like this hoity holier than thou attitude about like why you're somehow better than them because like you grew up in like a quote unquote nicer area, right? Like don't do that. Okay. So yeah, this is my origin story, guys. Not the ops at the Aldi's every Saturday. Yes. Playing ops at the Aldi's every Saturday. What is the meme on TikTok? Playing ops. That shit was so funny to me when I saw it. It's just like so unserious. But like there was like a meme of on TikTok, or a trend on TikTok. I don't know if people say meme anymore, of like guys in like their Sunday best, and it would have text and it'd be like, do you want to play ops this Sunday? If you want to play ops this Sunday, I'll have to ask my mom. And it's like they're in their Sunday's best, and then they have like a shiesty mascot, and they're like Sorry guys, sorry bros, can't play ops today. I have church in the morning. Like, and I think it would be trending to Maroon 5's Sunday morning. It's just like, girl. So yeah, no, you don't have to expose your kids to like playing ops with the homies every Saturday at Aldi's, but like, you know, have them in enrichment activities, have them in different classes, different dance classes, you know, different groups. I know my mom did try to put me in a group of with like black kids from the neighborhood and interacting with them, but quite frankly, my mom isn't really that social, so that didn't last too long. But there was an attempt in doing that, right? But yeah. And I just want to put this disclaimer out here because I don't want y'all to think that me talking about this shit equals me being like this or these people, right? So I don't want this to be about how I could never find black friends and how I was too whitewashed or whatever, because I do see in the narrative about with a lot of black kids who do grow up in suburbia currently that they feel like they're too whitewashed and that they're somehow too quote unquote good for the black friends that are around them or the black people that are around them because of how they talk and their music interests and what they're into. And that is not the case. That is not good. That is not good, and you should not have that mindset. Because honestly, at the end of the day, you're almost always going to find somebody that looks like you that shares similar interests than you. I'd almost argue that if you are a black person who says that you can never quote unquote find black friends because you're too whitewashed, there's probably some anti-blackness going on in yourself that you're not willing to unpack, that you are willing to project onto other black kids that don't try to assimilate to what you have been groomed to believe is acceptable, which is like whiteness. You know what I mean? So don't ever do that as a suburban black kid or a kid who does grow up in predominantly white institutions or areas, right? And so like I just want to put this disclaimer. This isn't about how I could never find black friends because I'm too whitewashed or whatever. I eventually found my tribe, and I do not do that anti-blackness BS, right? And I even told y'all that in 2010s in high school, I did find people who were like me, and I did find other black kids that I could hang out with that were kind of quirky, nerdy, and goofy, and way more social than me, and like had like their own special personality traits, and they were willing to accept me and have me be a part of their tribe. You know what I mean? So you'll always find somebody. Just you never want to move like this. You don't want to move like this, okay? As soon as you move like this, people are gonna like I will avert away immediately. Like that is like a repellent. Like go, okay, no, like you know what I mean. But just know that your tribe is out there. You will too have to do the work in finding said tribe, and you too have to make the effort as well. But those people are out there for you. That representation is there. All right. And so now I'm going to break down why the CT suburbs owe me absolutely everything and why I have no plans of ever returning back to that hellscape, okay? I don't want to go back, all right? You will not see me back. If you see me back, call the cops. Call the cops, call the FBI. That is not me, all right? I am in the sunken place. I cannot see myself going back. If like some sort of situation happened where there was like, I don't know, like Civil War type shit going on here in Georgia, right? I'd probably move to like the outskirts of New York, where like New York is like out, like NYC is like at my fingertips, like 30 minutes away on a train, right? But like, yeah, no, I'm not going back. Never going back, never going back. No, you can't make me, okay? Like, no. All right, and one of the main reasons why is the people, okay? And this is a fair stock image to show, because a lot of the people who go to who are in suburbs or predominantly white areas have a look and all dress the same and all want to assimilate. Okay, I remember this was like the Han Solo drip, right? Like with the leggings and the brown boots and the black vest. But in this case, it would be like the North Face jacket, right? So this was like all the rage. This was like the outfit that a lot of the white girls would wear back then. And then like a lot of black dudes or a lot of white boys would wear the Sperry's and the khaki shorts and the polo shirts and you know all of that, right? But the people sucked, bro. The people sucked. They were very ignorant, and it almost felt like in some cases that the few black kids that they did come across, they kind of treated them like novelties. I go back to that example of like Tyrone, and he's really good at basketball. And his name doesn't have to be Tyrone; it could be like Jeremy or whatever. He's really good at basketball, and then that's like his thing, right? And then if Jeremy says, "Hey, I'm going through some shit," right? It's like, no, but Jeremy's good at basketball. It almost felt like the black kids had to like shuck and jive with these stereotypes in order to be accepted into their groups, and then have to deal with like a lot of racist BS that might happen, or a lot of microaggressions that might happen that would be brushed off as quote unquote jokes. A good example of this is like the Fresh Prince of Bel Air reboot with Carlton. Oh no, it was canceled? That's unfortunate. Locker scene. So, but this scene right here, where Kyle, Larry, and all of them are saying the N-word, and Will's like, no, we don't do that here. A lot of that, and even not in like locker room situations, but just like talking with them, even if you play games with them, like that shit happens a lot. And I don't know, some guys will say, oh, well, that's just locker room talk, that's just how you talk in the waiting screen of Call of Duty or COD, but it's just like, it's really awful, and it's really isolating. And so needless to say, I was dressing like this a lot, but I don't really think this is how I wanted to dress. This is just me trying to, like, again, assimilate, right? And then, like, this is how a lot of the guys dress. But, like, dressing aside, right? Because fashion trends come and go, and people want to dress how they do, and that's fine. Everyone was very one-track minded and very, like, close-minded as well. Like, there wasn't, like, opportunity for, I guess, creativity or thinking outside of the box. Almost all of us had to go to college. Like, it was expected for you to go to college. If you did not go to college, then everyone was kind of side-eyeing you a little bit. However, I will say that's good peer pressure. You should educate yourself. But there was also the idea that you had to, like, if you weren't really smart, like super smart, or didn't buy your way into AP classes, right? Then you had to be really good at sports. And so if you weren't like super smart or good at test taking, right, or good at being a student, and you weren't good at sports, then you were not cool, and you just were kind of lame, and there wasn't a place for you. There wasn't much they could do with you, if that makes any sense. Money was a big factor as well. The more money you had, the more people would kind of like have respect for you. The more money you didn't have, the more people didn't have respect for you. Also, even when it came to me wanting to excel my education to a point, I remember when I first went to high school and they had put me in Spanish 1 again instead of Spanish 2. And I remember being so frustrated because I had gotten all A's in Spanish 1. But they felt like, I don't know who said it, the middle school teacher, I don't know who, they felt like it was best for me to redo Spanish 1 again. And I was confused. I was like, no, I've done Spanish 1. I've done well in Spanish 1. All of my other peers, all of my other white peers are in Spanish 2. Why can't I be in Spanish 2? And oh my God, I remember my mom being like, well, no, you should listen to the guidance counselor and redo Spanish 1. Like, I wasn't even taught to like really advocate for myself in the way that some of like, the rich white kids were taught, or like their parents or daddy's money or whatever would like tell them like, no, they're going to go to AP classes, or they're going to do this, and this, or they're going to get an A, or you're going to make their life a bit easier. I wasn't even taught to advocate for myself. I was just taught that, listen to these white folks that are probably going to undermine your achievements regardless, right? And so there was even that as well, like stereotypes too. Mind you, there came a time where the workload was too much for me. I want to say in my junior year of high school, where I felt like I had to, drop some classes. But I also was dealing with a lot of stress at home too. So I will give myself grace in that regard. But I also wasn't like an awful student. I got B's and A's, and that was enough for me. But like the mindset there was very much so. Like I remember everyone being obsessed with Jersey Shore, and me not really being in a Jersey Shore until I was in my 20s. I remember a lot of people being obsessed with. I mean, it's Twilight and vampires and werewolves, you know, and that's fine. But just everyone just having kind of the same thought process. And if you were in an anime, you were a weirdo. Again, to this day, just seeing how many people congregate over anime and manga and comics is insane to me. Because, like, if you were to tell 15-year-old me, listen, at 15 years, girl, they're gonna be all the way into this shit, I would have lost my mind. But yeah, there was that too. But it was just very, like, I don't know, just boring and bland. And I remember the first time I came here to Atlanta, how different and out of the box people thought. How there were like girls my age who were like into things that were of my age. They weren't trying to act way older than they actually were. Who were like, yeah, no, I watched Hannah Montana and this and that was dope, right? Like, it was so interesting to see the contrast of that just from how isolating things were in the Northeast, right? So, and then also the lack of representation, lack thereof. I'm not seeing a lot of girls that look like me, and you know, the microaggressions that came with that. I will also say, going back to like the Huda, Olandria, and Shelly dynamic, came across a lot of that shit too, which reminded me of the story time I wanted to tell you guys. Okay, so white girls specifically, right? Not all of them, but like a good chunk, right? And then weaponizing their white tears, okay? And how I learned that lesson early on when I was like 8 or 9 years old, okay? So, quick story time. All right, quick story time, okay? I had a sleepover birthday when I was like 9 years old. My mom had invited 3 black girls and 3 white girls to my sleepover party. Of the 3 white girls was my childhood best friend, another girl who kind of hung out with my childhood best friend, but my mom was kind of friends with their mom, and then one of the popular girls of the school, right? Mind you, this girl was wreaking havoc from elementary, middle school, and high school, and I knew this popular girl from elementary, middle, and high school, okay? And she was a whole mess. She was a whole mess. She did too much, hung out with the black kids, picked up on their ebonics and everything, and meanwhile went home to a family of like 8 siblings and like this big bougie house in Hartford, Connecticut, right? This mansion, micro mansion, or yeah, McMansion in Hartford, Connecticut. That was them, right? And then the 3 black girls, me, right? A black girl that was like kind of quiet, you know, didn't really talk as much, and another black girl who was also quiet but was more plus size, right? It's gonna be important that I talk about her being plus size, okay? So we're having this sleepover, right? We got the cool white girl. Let's just call her Amber. No. Okay, now I gotta do the math. Okay. So we got, let's do circles. Okay. Cool white girl. Their name is Kitten. Okay. Kitten is the cool white girl that is friends with everybody, that is rich and has like 8 siblings and is just terrorizing everybody, right? That's her name, Kitten, okay? And then you have oh no, different color. Orange. You have another white girl. We're gonna call them Erica. Friends with my mom, very mature for her age for whatever reason, but like she was at the party too, right? Erica, okay. Then we got the third white girl who was my childhood best friend. No, we're gonna stick with the warm tones for the white people. And we're gonna call them Diva. Okay, we're just gonna call them Diva. All right, so we got Kitten, Erica, and Diva. All right, please disregard that things aren't centered. All right. I wonder if there's like a moving mouse. I haven't been on MS Paint in God knows how long, so you guys are gonna have to bear with me. So we got Diva, Erica, and Kitten. Okay, those are the 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 white girls, right? And this is at my sleepover, right? Then we got the black girls, right? And so the black girls are me, the exes, okay? And then we got Sarah. Sarah is the quiet black girl that I thought was kind of cool, and she was nice enough. Sarah, right? And then the last girl, oh shit. And the last girl, her name is Alex. Okay, Alex. Okay. And yeah, that's her name. Okay, so, and then let's do the black girl. And this is what my sleepover was made up of. Okay, so there was like 3 black girls, 3 white girls. All right, I think there was one other black girl there, but she didn't sleep over, and her name was Libby, I think. I don't remember, but her name might have been Libby. Okay. Okay. Now, but she didn't sleep over. But me, Sarah, and Alex all slept over. Alex is the one that is plus size, okay? But quiet and very sweet. I actually went to one of her parties when I was 13 years old. And she actually left the school that I went to hang out with some other people she left the school that I went to a new school, flourished there, found some new friends, hung out at her party when I was like 13. Then we had Sarah, who was kind of quiet, kind of nice, so I hung out around her. Libby, also quiet and nice, but did not sleep over. Then there was me. Those were the 4 black girls. The white girls were Kitten, the popular girl, okay? The popular girl, who hung around black kids way too much than she should have. Erica, who was friends with my mom. Her mom was friends with my mom. And Diva, who was my childhood best friend, okay? So this is the setup. All right? Now, like I said, Libby is not going to be sleeping over. Okay, she's not going to be staying that long. All right, she stays for the whole day and then she leaves. Right? I feel like if Libby was here, she would have been like the balancing ground, right? For all of this, and we wouldn't have had like a white girls tears TM moment, right? So Libby was no longer there, right? And so the sleepover consists of 6 of us. And as the sleepover commences, and as like we're doing a lot of activities, we're watching movies, what I start to notice is that tensions start to rise. Kitten is the popular girl, right? Kitten, popular, right? Miss Popular, as popular girls do, well, you got to be a little mean when you're popular, right? And you kind of have to be a little bit of a bully. It weaponizes her tears, okay? And I'll show you how. Okay, first, what she does is she starts throwing jabs at Alex, right? Quiet girl, plus size girls. She starts throwing jabs at her and hating on her. Erica and Diva are like, girl, what is going on? Like, why are you doing that? But before she's like truly trying to throw shade and hate on Alex, she has to have someone to co-sign her nonsense. So what does she do? She lets Sarah co-sign her nonsense. The other quiet black girl, right, who didn't really speak that much. Because that's how bullies kind of work, especially bullies who want to bully other people of color, right? I don't know if she realized this because we're all like 9, but this is something I picked up on now, like thinking back from when I was like 8 and 9 years old, is that in order for the bullying of her to work, she needs to have a working relationship with Sarah, right? Otherwise, Sarah would be like, girl, why are you being a weirdo? Alex checked her shit, right? Because, girl, why are you trying to act like a black girl, but you grew up in like the bougie rich area of Connecticut? Like, what are we doing, right? Like, you speaking in Ebonics, you speaking like you so cool and everything, girl. What are you doing, right? And Alex was checking that shit. Right? At a young age, very socially aware, right? Kitten didn't like that, so Kitten is gonna bully Alex. Alex is going to stand up for herself, as Alex should. Shout out to Alex, wherever you are, girl. Shout out to you. stand up for herself, right? And so Kitten she needs to get Sarah on board with her nonsense. Guess how they trauma bond over their nonsense? Okay, and this big screen because I'm about to get serious, okay? They start talking about inappropriate encounters they had with their cousins to trauma bond with their nonsense. Okay, they start talking about all the adult and not safe for work things they were doing as children to trauma bond with their nonsense. So I say all that to say, if we can go back to like the Love Island case study, right? With like Huda and her coming out about like how she was probably being abused, how she was allegedly abused by her father, and how her sisters kind of were like whatever. It was like a similar situation to that, except we were all kids. This was not appropriate, and they were perfectly okay with having this conversation and bonding over this, right? But they needed to do this because and what was weird about this is that they were laughing about it. Like, they were laughing about the not safe for work encounters that they had with their cousins at like 9-10 years old, which is very creepy. And it's not their fault, right? But it's just like how much, unfortunately, like the adults in their spaces did like fail to help them, and probably why Kitten had kind of acted the way she had, like being very belligerent and outspoken. And needless to say, in the upcoming years, Kitten would be a menace to society in middle school and in high school. And later on, I would learn that as into adult years, apparently Kitten is still up to their shenanigans. It's very unfortunate. I feel like the adults failed her, right? They failed her a ton. And that she was lashing out, but also she had no right bullying Alex. Alex did not deserve the bullying because Alex stood up for herself, and Alex was like, why are you being weird? Kitten is not going to be able to get away with her shenanigans unless she gets another, girl on her side, to co-sign her trying to be something that she's not. Okay? And so she gets Sarah. They trauma bond over like an abusive situation, which is weird. And then they all start collectively picking on Alex, right? Young Exes is over here like, what the fuck is happening? Like, why can't we all get along? Libby is gone. Libby stayed for the day, and her mom was like, no, we don't do sleepovers. Sorry, girl, bye, right? And then Erica and Diva are like, girl, what do we do? Like, we're just trying to have a good time. Even to this day, when I do call up Diva, she's like, yeah, that was way too much. Like, I don't know why Kitten was carrying on the way she did, right? And Erica is just like, this is like ridiculous, right? Because the bullying starts to escalate, right? This white girl Kitten, the bullying starts to escalate with her, okay? And her and Sarah are actively trying to pick on and antagonize Alex. Not only are they antagonizing Alex, they are insistent on watching inappropriate shows and inappropriate movies late at night when my family are asleep. So I think one show that we watch is like Lifetime After Dark. So Lifetime After Dark nonsense about like a sapphic, not like spicy, soft core corn relationship that I know damn well we should not be watching, right? But somehow we end up watching it. I'm young and impressionable. I want to be cool. I don't want to feel the wrath of Alex, which unfortunately I should have stuck up for Alex when I was like 9, but I didn't, right? And so we're all just watching this. And then I think we watched the Adam Sandler movie where he's a kid, like he didn't graduate from the 4th grade. So we watched that movie too. And I wasn't allowed to watch that either because I'm not allowed to watch PG-13 movies because I'm 9, okay? And as the night commences and as my mom is going to sleep, by the way, Kitten is absolutely abhorrent. Like, she is doing the absolute most. She is like picking on Alex. She's also talking about how my mom is wearing a robe and she assumes that there's nothing on underneath the robe. Like, it is a literal legit mess, right? And so as the evening commences and as things go on, right, hostility starts to arise with Alex. Kitten does the antics of, oh, so-and-so did this and that. And Sarah, wanting to seek the approval of Kitten and also trauma bonding with the abuse They're trauma bonding with the abuse that they talked about. Sarah is defending Kitten a lot more, right? And Kitten is over here like bullying Alex, like hardcore, just bullying Alex. And mind you, I want to also say that like Kitten and Sarah are talking about the blatant abuse that they went through at 9 years old as if it's like a joke. It's funny, like it's a rite of passage or maturity. It's unfortunate and sad, and I wish that didn't happen, and I wish the parents didn't fail them, but it could also explain why the lashing out had happened for so long, and unfortunately how they've ended up as to who they are right now, right? Anyway, bullying escalates. They keep bullying Alex. It's late at night. It's like 1, 2 in the morning. Erica and Diva are like, girl, can we just chill out? Because they're starting to fight in the bedroom next to my room for the sleepover, right? Then it gets to a point where Kitten decides to have a pillow fight with Alex because she's been antagonizing her so much. She calls her fat. She calls her like that she's a weirdo, that she shouldn't be doing the things that she's doing, that she's doing too much, making fun of her weight, right? Like Kitten is awful, right? And so they start a pillow fight. Kitten and Alex start the pillow fight. Kitten starts the pillow fight. Alex does not. Kitten throws a pillow hard at Alex. Alex is like, bet, and whacks Kitten across the head with the pillow. Because, like, Kitten started it, right? And so then Kitten does what we see a bunch of white girls do. And guess what Kitten does? Guess what Kitten does? Tears over the fact that she was antagonizing Alex. Alex stood up for herself, and Kitten immediately starts crying. And whether I knew it or not, I knew the vibes were off. I knew the vibes were incorrect, that this shouldn't be the thing that is happening at the sleepover. This is my sleepover. It's my birthday party. Kitten already making people uncomfortable by watching shows that are incredibly inappropriate for our age. Watching movies that are probably inappropriate for our age, trauma bonding over things that they probably need to speak to an adult that can help them over with another adult, young child, right? Now you're antagonizing Alex, talking about her weight, talking about how big she is, all this other nonsense, and then you start a pillow fight with Alex, and Alex is like, don't throw pillows in my face. Alex whacks her with the pillow. Now she does the huda, and she's doing the white woman tears, the white girl tears, and now she's coming down to my parents' room, and she's like, so-and-so beat me up, like, I just don't understand, she's so awful. And Sarah's coming to her aid because they're trauma bonding about this abuse that the adults failed to help them with, and thinks that she's a part of the in crowd of Kitten, right? And Alex is over here crying because they have been antagonizing me this whole entire time. And then I finally stand up for myself, and this is what happens, right? This is what happens. And needless to say, the next day, Erica and Diva are like, girl, what do we, like we're just trying to go to bed. Libby's like, I'm not even here, bitch, right? And I'm over here like stressed because I'm like, I just want us to have a good time, and all of this shit is happening, right? Needless to say, the next day, Alex leaves early in the morning because she just can't do it anymore. In the upcoming years, she is no longer at my school, and she moves to a different school. She goes to a different school instead and is able to find community and friendship there. Kitten continues to antagonize and utilize her white girl, which eventually turned into white woman tears, in order to get what she wants throughout middle school and high school, and I guess later on in her adult life, right? And the whole situation was weird and crazy. But one thing that I will remember about the whole thing is how blatantly uncomfortable I felt about the situation. How I felt like something was off and things were unfair. I thought it was incredibly unfair that Kitten was bullying Alex in the way that she was, in order to establish dominance. I also thought it wasn't cool that she latched onto another black girl by trauma bonding with some abuse that like the adults in their life failed to help them through in order to lash out against another girl named Alex, who was standing up for herself and calling out the blatant nonsense that like Kitten was on. Okay. But later on, when I got more smart and I wisened up and I figured out what was actually happening, and with more than enough Love Island dissertations that I've seen, I realized what Kitten was doing. She was like using her existence as a white girl at the time in order to weaponize it against Alex, even though she continued to antagonize her, right? And again, it might be because there was some family members in her life who failed to support her. But I will never, ever, ever be able to co-sign or agree with anybody bullying and lashing out towards other people because of unhealed trauma that they haven't been able to deal with themselves, even if they're children. I don't think that's okay. And I think that was a prime example of what happens when you do not, when the parents don't protect their kids and neglect their kids, but also what happens when white people villainize black folks after antagonizing them for a very long time and using the fragility crisis in order to villainize us. That was my first example of that as a white girl, right? And then I want to go back to this real quickly because I think I might have gotten some confusion here. I think Sarah, the black girl, was the only one that had like a story of how she was abused by her cousin, and Kitten latched onto that for street cred. I don't think Kitten had an abuse story. Don't quote me on that, but I don't think Kitten had an abuse story. But Kitten used like Sarah's like sexual advancements as like her having street cred and her wanting Sarah and Kitten to be friends, right? And then like the whole party, Sarah and Kitten are just hanging out by themselves. They're not really hanging out with the group. And then they're picking on Alex the whole party. And so that was my first example of what happens when you stand up for yourself as a black girl when people are antagonizing you. It did not happen to me directly, but I saw it happen. Later on, though, the same instance would happen with me with a white girl that I went to high school with, where she thought I was going to beat her up because I just looked at her weird. And I guess I just looked at her like, you know, but she thought I was going to beat her up, and she was about to get all her friends to like defend her from me getting beaten up. But yeah, the people really did a number on me in Connecticut for that reason. The white girls and the white boys, you know, awful, right? All right, so number two, another reason why I will not be going back to Connecticut and the suburbs owe me absolutely everything is it was incredibly isolating. And I really want to talk about this, okay? Because people underestimate how isolating it was in the 2000s as a Y2K kid. All right, everybody romanticizes the 2000s as, oh, well, the VMAs were awesome and pop culture was good and music was so monumental and pivotal and like, you know, everyone actually had artists in development in the music industry and the reality TV was so much more raw and the shows were way more consistent. That's true. But while that is true, I think it's also safe to address that a lot of the reasons why the music, the art, the media, and the entertainment was so good is because a lot of people were being exploited in the process, one. But two, that also wasn't real life in like everyday, you know, early 2000s life. Like that's not like you would see the VMAs and see Christina Aguilera and Britney Spears putting a big sloppy one on Madonna, right? In like the 2003 VMAs. But like I can almost guarantee you like everyday life, like there was other stuff that we had to deal with, right? Like it was just boring, it was isolating, and if you were a little outcast like me, it was very, very hard for you to find your own tribe, and it really took people either offering an olive branch or you trying to put yourself out there. And even then, because certain things weren't cool anymore, like I'm thinking about how people are like openly like support like furries, right? Like I love me some furries. Shout out to the furries, right? That could not fly in the 2000s, girl. That could not fly. You being into anime could not fly in the 2000s. You being like deeply entrenched in Wattpad, Harry Styles ex Liam Payne fan fiction, or My Little Pony, has been hotel coded fandom nonsense, OC do not steal sparkle dog nonsense. That would not fly in the 2000s, okay? And so, you know, me talking about my weird hyperfixation about Sonic the Hedgehog and like all the things I did, all the debaucherous things I did on the internet, regular kids were looking at me like I was a fucking weirdo. Like they were looking at me like I was a fucking weirdo. They were like, "Okay, girl." And so I just isolated myself. I already know that I'm black. I'm a woman in suburbia. All right, the price of being black in suburbia, right? And you know, there is the prejudices that go along. If things escalated based off of the example of what I told you about what happened at my sleepover and what eventually happened to me, right? I could not. It felt like in some cases I really couldn't stand up for myself without having to filter myself in so many ways that I felt I needed to, right? Like, and it just got very lonely for me. The internet became my community. Snooki here on the internet, because Jersey Shore was so popular back then. Snooki here on the internet, right? That was me trying to find anybody who actually gave a damn about my Sonic obsession in the 2000s. Like that was literally me trying to find community, finding community on message boards, forums, eventually like art platforms like DeviantArt and Tumblr. Like that was me. It was very lonely. It was very hard to have other ideas, other interests that were like different or quirky or out there. That other people in your immediate community were actually interested in. I have been watching a couple of videos of people who are in like the goth and alternative scene, and them talking about their experiences of what it was like being goth after Columbine, the pew-pewing that happened in 1999, right? And how teachers were so worried about people who showed up in trench coats because they thought that they were gonna unalive their friends because of like what they saw these two kids do to their friends in Columbine, right? And how they would go out of their way to like bully and antagonize the alt or the goth kid, right? That very much true. Like from a distance, from outside looking in, very much true. And if you're black and you're into those things, girl, it's given this. That's how they see you. It's given this. It's given this. It's given this. You are not like you're trying to be an Oreo. You know what I mean? But I say all that to say that while people like to romanticize what the 2000s were like and how life was like before we had our phones and everything, it could get very lonely if you didn't have a community of friends that you hung out with, or even if the people you did hung out with like just didn't like you. It was very difficult. It was very hard. It was a lot easier for you to just feel lonely in your thoughts and in your mindset. The way that social media makes it so easy for you to find different forms of community, like flat earthers can now congregate and have conventions on their idiotic nonsense. Like you have to think about that. QAnon was a thing. QAnon in the 2000s would be like, oh, that's just Granny off her rocker. Let's get her medication. Like that's really what it would be. Or that's just Crazy Eyes Beth. Let's, leave her alone. And the way they would weaponize mental health back then, like even if we did encourage them to go see somebody about like their mental health issues, it was like, oh, they're fucking crazy, leave them alone. It was just weird back then. Yes, pop culture paints the 2000s in a lens that is strongly romanticized, that everyone wanted to be a part of, that gave a very strong form of FOMO. But living like day to day in that lifestyle was incredibly lonely and incredibly boring, especially if you're growing up in a place where there isn't a lot of effort for creativity or thinking outside the box or being unique, and celebrates more so conformity. It was lonely. It was lonely, and the internet was my friend, and I found solace in the internet, and I was okay with being on the internet, being some cringy 15-year-old contrarian with a DeviantArt problem. I was okay with that. Third reason why Connecticut absolutely owes me everything, or Suburbia absolutely owes me everything, is the mentality. The mentality was awful. The mentality was terrible. Okay? These are a few examples I have, right? I talked about this one briefly about the white girl who thought I was going to beat her up because I looked at her funny, and that was it. And then, like, she convinced everybody that I was going to try and beat her up, right? So that definitely did happen. The amount of code switching I had to do before I even opened my mouth, like, crazy, right? But also, when things got racially charged, when Barack Obama became president, we started to see how these white kids really felt about black people, right? But also when Trayvon Martin passed away, and Mark Zimmerman was let go, a lot of white kids had the mindset of, well, there were pictures of Trayvon Martin with a blunt, so he must be, you know, like, I can see why Mark Zimmerman, it was just weird. I don't know if a lot of you guys remember, but Trayvon Martin was one of the few faces of how Black Lives Matter got started. So before George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery and Philando Castile, we had Trayvon Martin and I think Michael Brown. And when Trayvon Martin happened, I remember how many people were shocked and just angry because we heard the audio. We didn't see, thank God, you know, the way he was unalived, but we heard the audio of Mark Zimmerman on the phone with the cops trying to chase down this kid because he had a hoodie on. And when they were looking into the research of like who Trayvon Martin was and what he did as a kid, a good chunk of white kids would immediately go to, well, there was a picture of him with a blunt in his hand on Facebook, so that must mean that he's a gangbanger. So as if Mark Zimmerman knew that when Trayvon was walking through the neighborhood, right? That opened the conversation up for us to talk about how we need to talk to our children when it comes to police and racial profiling. So that sucked. But I had to eat that. I had to eat that shit sandwich. I had to eat the code switching shit sandwich of like not even being able to speak up for myself before people already assumed that I was just hostile. Which if you look at me, like, look at me. Do I look like a hostile person? And I looked completely different when I was younger. Like, I didn't even look anywhere near as hostile as I did back then. I didn't look hostile at all, okay? But, like, people just assumed, like, oh, she's gonna beat me up, right? Because those are the preconceived notions. Thanks, Cole. Thanks. Always got my back, right? I had to deal with that as well. I remember there was one time, like, a Latina girl like stole candy out of my box of candy that I had to sell in high school, and I just quite frankly let her do it. And she was like, wow, you're just gonna let me steal candy out of your box? And it's like, yes, I will, because if I don't, this shit is gonna happen all over again. You're gonna pull a Huda on me. If I say, no, give me my candy, and I pull it and yank it from you, you're gonna be like, oh, why are you being so, I just don't understand why you have to be so hostile. Bitch, you're stealing my candy. So no, I'm gonna let you take my candy, because I'm not gonna risk that shit. I'm not gonna risk you coming out with rumors about me being violent because you're out here crossing my boundaries. Girl, bye. Anyway, I also dealt with a high school teacher, disgusting as fuck, but we had foreign exchange students from South Korea that came to live with us in America and came to our school. And I had a high school teacher literally tell this foreign exchange student, grown ass man, literally tell us, white girls are just superior and hot. Right? Like, I remember that. Okay? Fondly. I'm sitting at the very front of the class. This dude is a horrible history teacher, by the way. He's not good at his job. Okay? Sitting at the very front of the class. And this man is talking about, like, negging this foreign exchange minor student, mind you, as to what he likes so much about America. And like this dude is a kid, right? He's like, oh well, I really like the girls. I think the girls are cool, right? And then he turns to him and he's like, yeah, the white girls. Yeah, the white girls are good, aren't they? Yeah, and the kid just kind of like shies away. It's like, yeah, yeah. And they have like a bro moment. This 40-year-old man is having a weird ass grooming moment with like this 15, 16-year-old kid who's just trying to do his job, his schoolwork, right? And everyone laughs like, ah. And I'm just like, wow, that's weird. Because one, we're grooming this underage kid into thinking that like sex is everything, right? That's weirdo behavior. Like, you should not be talking inappropriately to a kid that way, too, right? And two, immediately I already knew I'm not the beauty standard at this school, girl. Like, I'm not the beauty standard at this school. I'm the beauty standard in the state, okay? Like, they are not into me like that. So, and they're proving that to me in real time. Like, the foreign exchange student from Korea does not want to hang out with me. He does not want to date me, right? And the dudes that look like me, they don't want to date me either. They don't know. They don't want to date me either, because there were a good chunk of dudes, right, who either said or hinted at the fact that they do not date black girls because of whatever happened to them when they were 5 or 6 years old. I put a pin in this though because I've heard this conversation happen a lot. I feel like this is an unemployment talking point that people use to talk about like gender war bullshit amongst black people, right? Because I was also like this too. Like, I'm not gonna lie, I was like this too. I was like, I don't want to date black dudes because they picked on me when I was 5 years old. But when I tell you I grew out of that very, very fast, especially when I came to Atlanta. Like, no, I wasn't. And then even like the guy friend that I was hanging out with in high school, because he wasn't like that either. I grew out of that very, very, very fast. So when I hear this talking point from some black dudes, when they're like, oh, well, black girls just picked on me when I was younger. Always unprovoked, mind you, right? Unprovoked, unasked for. I just kind of just like try to change the subject, or I'm just like, all right, girl, whatever. Like, sure, I guess, bro. I guess, homie, right? Because at this point, I really, like, you're making excuses. Like, you can find, like, you're making excuses. Your preferences are probably rooted in some sort of prejudice. I can't help you, but I hope you work out whatever's going on. Because at the end of the day, you should not want to try and date somebody because of whatever trauma happened to you when you were 5. And you really shouldn't want to try and date someone because of whatever prejudices you have towards a certain group of people that look like you when you, as you like date around. Like, you shouldn't. But I dealt with that a lot, right? And even now, I like encourage women that look like me to like date and go where you're loved, right? That it really doesn't matter at the end of the day, especially when you see a lot of the men doing the same damn thing. But yeah, I had to deal with that too, and that kind of sucked as well. Until I got hot, and then people started paying attention to me again. Did not get hot in high school either, by the way. I got hot in like college, and then like everyone was in the DMs. It was just weird. But yeah, the mentality sucked. It was very isolating. Isolation, like, in trying to find interest in community of people who are into what you were into, and then the mentality of having to deal with this nonsense on a daily basis. No. And so this is where I talk about the identity crises that I had growing up in Connecticut, right? And like how hard it was for me to pick which type of person I wanted to be. On one hand, I really wanted to be my authentic self. I wanted to dress alt and be into anime and comics. But then there was the worry about, or being like openly into anime and comics. But then there was worried about getting possible judgment and ridicule from like my schoolmates and my super strict family. I remember one time I used to put like eyeliner underneath my eye, and my family was like, we don't want you doing that. That's gothic. It's not cool. We don't like that. You know? And so I had to worry about that, or just assimilating to whatever anybody wanted me to be to appease my parents, my family, my friends, at the expense of my mental health. and or my already low self-esteem. Needless to say, I picked this button as well. But girly pops, let me tell you something. When you pick the assimilation button, okay, um, when you pick the assimilation button, it always comes at a cost. What the cost is that you start having really bad identity crises when you're like 27 plus years old, all right, and you start making really bad mistakes. You never get to unpack the actual mental health that you have, mental health issues you had as a kid, and then you start trying to find ways for approval, whether it be through men or other people, right? Don't assimilate. You don't want to have that identity crisis when you're older, okay? I know, especially nowadays with the milkmaid dress trends and the trad wife trends and the, you know, femininity and masculinity trends that are out right now, there is this, and the old money aesthetic that is getting popular. There is this pressure to have people assimilate more. That if you step outside of the norm, if you step outside of the status quo, you are considered an outcast, right? And I am here to tell all of you guys that one, this will probably come to pass in the next decade or so. We're going to be looking back at this time period like it was the worst thing ever, hopefully. And two, you end up crashing out at ages where you should have probably learned how to be way more emotionally mature than you should where you should probably have learned how to be way more emotionally mature and settled with yourself at that certain age, right? Like my theory for a lot of the people who are falling in line with like this conservative type of nonsense that is out right now, my theory is that they're probably going to crash out again in the next decade or so, and we're going to see a lot of like Gen Zers who fell in line with the Gen Zers and millennials who fell in line with like the modesty culture have their brat summer in like 10 years when they're like in their well into their 30s and 40s, which like it's okay, girl, do you, but like everything comes at a cost. You never want to assimilate. You always want to be the person who is authentically you, who does not care so much about what people think about you. I think for me, with everything that was going on, me having a lot of anxiety about myself and my existence, dealing with like a lot of bullshit that was going on at home, and also dealing with stuff like this from my parents and then at school, it felt like the safest thing for me to do as survival was to assimilate, right? Because if I stepped too much out of the box, if I'm too different, if I'm too quirky, if I even put up a boundary, it could be seen as a threat, especially if you are Black in suburbia, white suburbia, you know what I mean? And so I feel like I did a lot of the things I did out of protection for myself, my mental health, well-being, right? But at the end of the day, if you can help it, please try to always pick this button, because you'll always love yourself that much more for it, okay? Always try to be your authentic self. Nerd out about your weird hyperfixations, and please do not give a crap about what anybody ever thinks about you, because you will end up regretting it later on in your adult life, especially when there is more of a social expectation for you to assimilate even more because you're quote unquote too old to do certain things, which is also a lie. You're never too old to do anything, but you know, we live in an ageist society, so it is what it is. So yeah, those are the 4 reasons, but I really want to cover this real quickly, that like Black suburbia and white suburbia are not the same. When I came to Atlanta, I was exposed to what a Black suburbs looks like. It was the very first time I'd seen that. And I will tell you that if I grew up in that environment, in that space, I feel like I would have moved a lot more differently. I would have been way more confident in myself. I would have been way more sure of myself. I do not recommend this for any brown Black person at all. And I feel like if you do live in white suburbia, right, I think that you need to make a genuine effort to integrate your kids with other children that are in that environment, or other children that are, you know, like outstanding children, outstanding Black adults that are a part of, that are outside of the community, so that you never forget who you are as a person of color. as a Black person. I think it's very important. And shout out to Black Suburbia. Shout out to my Black people who are moving more and more into the suburbs, who are getting money, who are able to support their families. Shout out to you guys, because seeing this representation is important, especially when we've gone through years of negative representation of us in the media and entertainment. So shout out to us. But these are never going to be the same. And that's why when I say the price of being white or Black in suburbia, it's always specifically a white suburbia. It's always specifically like PWI, predominantly white institutions. It's always specifically that environment. I even have friends who, Black friends, who grew up around money, honey. And like the way they move, the swagger, and the way they carry themselves versus the way I was raised and the way I moved around and the way I carry myself. 10 times different, way more confident, way more sure of themselves. And we need to see more of us in this environment. I think it's very important, because we need to talk more about these experiences. And I would never want to see another, Black girl dealing with the same shit I had to deal with growing up because of this nonsense. So, but shout out to my parents for raising me in a safe area. Like, I say all that to say that they raised me in a safe area, and it could have been a lot worse. They raised me in like really good school systems, and it could have been a lot worse. So like, shout out to them. I'll always thank them for that. They did their big one for that. But also shame on them for the anti-Black, better than thou, not like other Blacks rhetoric. It really did a number on me getting older, that I had to like trauma, like I had to like fix that part of myself and fix that trauma of myself in order to be, who I am now, in order to be an advocate for representation now, and to support Black people in the way I do now. So both things can be true at once. I thank my parents for keeping me safe, and doing what they had to in order to let me be an outstanding citizen in society. I also see it as a privilege too, right? Because I used to be so worried about coming off as too basic and not as unique. And I have to keep reminding myself that me having the privilege of growing up where I did, or me being able to do the things I'm able to do, or me even just waking up in the morning with the privilege of being able to, like, I don't know, get a chai latte at Dunkin' Donuts or whatever coffee place we're shopping at now, right? People might look at that as basic, but I'll forever and always look at that as a privilege, because a lot of us don't have those means and resources. You know what I mean? Like, obviously anyone could walk into a Starbucks, but to have the luxury to, be at rest and be cozy, or to get into basic things, I don't really support them. But seeing a bunch of Black women be able to wear and afford Lululemon, I don't support Lululemon. That's y'all. Like, y'all can support Lululemon all you want to, but like, that's a privilege, right? Like, sure, a white girl wearing Lululemon might be basic, right? But like, we are able to afford Lululemon. Like, that's cool. Should you buy Lululemon? Probably not. But like, that privilege of being able to do that, in no way, shape, or form could ever be basic. Seeing someone like an Olandria or a Shelly on Love Island never ever will be seen as basic to me. Will always be seen as aspirational and incredibly important. Being able to see Black kids like me, I don't know, Black nerds like me, like Sailor Moon, and other people be like, that's a basic anime. Never be a basic anime, because a lot of us got picked on and bullied just for watching Toonami. So, shout out to us for like doing better in society. You know what I mean? All right. And then last but not least, to close things off, shout out to Atlanta. No, y'all won't ever understand how much I love this place, even though it has its issues. I pulled up some pictures from like some conventions I've been to. I've been to MomoCon. I've been to Dragon Con. I really want to go to Anime Week in Atlanta. I've also I pulled up some stuff from Piedmont Park, or like the Pride section of Piedmont, and the Pride Parade, and the city in general. But I just say all that to say shout out to you guys and ATL. The representation here is very, very nice. Even like the little pockets of diversity that I see. Like today, I went to a spot that was like predominantly like Chinese food, like authentic Chinese food and Chinese merchandise and all of that, right? And I ate there and it was so nice. Um, I really think that if it weren't for this place and me living in this place when me first visiting this place when I was 17 years old and making the decision to go here for college, I probably would have been a completely different person. I probably would have had a lot of mental health issues. I would have had an identities crisis. Someone's musty, dusty, disgusting ass son would have probably impregnated me because of said low self-esteem issues. And I wouldn't be the girl that I am today. I wouldn't be the woman that I am today. I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you guys in the way that I do here today, and being the representation that other people that look like me need. You know what I mean? So yeah, shout out to the ATL. Love y'all down. Love y'all down. I'm so sad that I wasn't here this Dragon Con, but I'm coming back with the vengeance next year, guys. Maybe I'll do a stream there. I don't know. But last but not least, to close things out, shout out to y'all. Shout out to my Black queens. Shout out to my Black divas. And not just any Black divas. Shout out to my weirdo Black divas, my Afro-punk Black divas, my quirky Black divas that are into cosplay, that are into the alt scene, that are into like things that are not conventionally a part of what we identify or what we used to identify Blackness with. Y'all are incredibly important, and I will always be an advocate for the representation you guys showcase on social media and on the internet on a daily basis. To go back to this point really quickly, the way it would have been so important and valuable to have a Pinterest or an Instagram or a TikTok specifically curated to Black women who carry the same interests as me. When I was growing up as a teenager, the way that is so important. The way that like we have talking points of how to stand up for ourselves. Weird ass dissertations of like Love Island and Huda's weaponization of her tears. This would have helped with whatever I was going through when I was a kid or when I was in high school, right? Like the way that we have taken social media by a chokehold and we have carved out a space for ourselves and represented ourselves in a way that isn't a stereotype written by 12 writers on a show about 4 Black women, or written by a man who has an existential crisis about his sexuality and always is showing struggle love of Black women. Like, it is very important that we are seen, right? We are making space for ourselves, and that we are showing up in social media spaces that are adamantly telling us that we should not be a part of. No matter how different, no matter how quirky, no matter how weird we are as people. I love you guys down so much. I think you all are so important to the type of person I am and the person I'm probably going to end up becoming. And I can't wait to see how we all are evolving, as whether you're into cosplay, whether you're into alternative stuff, rock music, whether you're just like a weird earthy Black girl or you're just a weirdo. People like Issa Rae are very, very important. I forgot to mention her. Issa Rae and SZA. SZA with her honesty in her music, but also like Issa Rae with her ability to make relatable, honest content about being a Black woman in America that isn't always like a struggle. Well, it was a little bit of a struggle of plot points in the beginning of Insecure, you know what I mean? But I love that. I love that so much. And I love that we have that representation here. And, you guys are so important. And it's really pour one out for the dedicated Black nerd fans for sure. Yes, Cole, pour one out for us, right? Because we are so important and our community is important as well. And I really hope that we can only grow and flourish. I need all of you guys to know that the more you keep posting and the more you keep showing up on the internet, there is some little Black girl out in suburbia, there is some black woman who's going to a predominantly white college who's probably being judged by all of the white people about like how they exist in that space, and you just being there and representing like what it's like to just be different in the skin that you're in is so freaking important. And so thank you guys so much. Thank you guys for the representation that you guys are adamantly showing up as. And to any of my other suburban black girls that grow up, just know that you're not alone, that I'm here, Cole's here, that there are other girls that are on the internet that are just like you, that you don't have to assimilate, you don't have to fit the status quo, you can be different, you can be weird, you can have weird hyperfixations about, I don't know, cross universe character fan fictions. I don't know, what is it, what demon hunters, you can have weird hyperfixations about demon hunters and like K-pop too, like, you know, shout out to y'all. Though I will say that if you're into K-pop, I would encourage you, I would just implore you to listen to early 2000s R&B and pop music. Just listen, give it a listen, give it a little listen, okay? Because K-pop do be biting off that a little bit. But like, you're not alone, and you are loved, and I'm happy that I am here to tell you that you're not alone, and I'm happy that there are other people out here that look like me showcasing that you're not alone as well. So yeah, that is it today, guys. I'm gonna cut it short. That's the end of my big project that I wanted to talk about. Thank you. Shout out to the people who stuck around and watched, especially Cole. Thanks for calling out the stock image I had. I'm glad I changed it. That was funny. That's not the first time someone has called me out for the lack of representation in my stock image. I think it's just like a really like random, girl, why didn't you think about this type of issue? But thank you for calling me out. Continue to do so if you feel like the representation isn't there. And I will see you guys next week. It has been a wonderful time being on live stream with you all. Feel free to like and subscribe. And yeah, just have a wonderful rest of your weekend and rest of your week. It's Labor Day weekend. So like, I know we have a big, nice, fat, long, juicy weekend ahead of us. Enjoy it while it lasts. And then we'll go into the rest of September, and we'll have a fun Halloween time. I don't know why I'm feeling Halloween this year. I don't know what it is. I think it's a lot of things. A lot of things as to why I'm feeling Halloween this year. But you know, we gotta stay on code. Period, Cole. Period. and I'm on my Umar shit. Dr. Umar is a mess. I feel like Dr. Umar needs to be deplatformed. I'm sorry. Like, I just can't. Like, we can do better than Dr. Umar. We all gotta deprogram. We can do better than Dr. Umar. We deserve better. So, yeah, guys. Thank you so much for tuning into my stream. I will see you guys next week. Have a wonderful rest of your weekend and take care. Bye, guys.